You know, something that's probably on your mind, especially if you're an educator, is this huge shift happening with AI. Like, when students use it,
Yeah.
is that cheating? It's a question that really gets to the core of what we think learning is.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And to help us maybe get a clearer view, we're going to dig into a really insightful chat. It was between Matt Miller, author of Ditch That Textbook
Mm.
and AI for Educators, and Dan Fitzpatrick. He's the AI educator on YouTube.
Exactly. Both Matt and Dan, they really have their fingers on the pulse of how tech is changing things in schools. So our aim today is to, well, unpack this whole landscape of AI in the classroom. We'll look specifically at the different ways students might actually be using these tools.
Yeah, and we really want to focus on Matt Miller's idea of a spectrum of AI use. It's not just yes or no.
Right. And also Dan Fitzpatrick's really important point, you've probably heard it, outsourcing the doing, not the thinking. We need to explore that. Plus, we've got to talk about the whole tricky area of AI detection. So yeah, let's dive in together and see what these experts offer that might help you make sense of it all.
Okay, so let's start maybe by looking at the different ways AI is actually showing up in student work. Matt Miller, he came up with this really helpful spectrum to visualize the possibilities.
Okay, let's break down the spectrum Matt describes. So on one end, you've got the scenario where basically AI does student work for them with absolutely no thought involved, like none.
Right, zero student effort, essentially.
Exactly. Then flip to the complete opposite end. Student doing all the work without any help. No AI, not even like the internet. But the key thing here, and Matt really emphasizes this, is that huge, often murky area in between. He calls it the messy middle.
And what's so fascinating about this messy middle, something for you to really consider, is just how many different ways AI can actually be woven in. Matt gives some really concrete examples.
He does. Take the situation where maybe AI generates a first draft, right?
Mm.
And then the student's job is to edit it, revise it based on what they've been learning.
Okay.
Matt sees real potential there, particularly for students who, maybe struggle just getting started, like English language learners, perhaps.
Mm.
It lets them focus more on the writerly decisions, not just staring at a blank page.
That's a really interesting angle, shifting the focus to revision. Another example Matt brings up is where a student writes their own piece entirely, but then uses AI, maybe, to get feedback,
Yeah.
suggestions for improvement.
Yeah, that feels kind of like a natural step up from tools we already use, doesn't it? Like spell check or grammar check, just more advanced. It's using AI to polish their own work.
Exactly. AI is a refinement tool.
Right. Then there's the case where AI produces a draft, but the student then totally rewrites it. They make sure their own ideas, their voice, their tone all comes through. They're engaging with the AI stuff, but making it theirs.
And here's where it gets really thought-provoking for you. Matt also mentions students maybe using AI just to brainstorm ideas, for a project, but then they go off and write the whole thing themselves.
Oh, okay.
He makes this really great comparison to, say, teachers using Pinterest for lesson ideas.
Mm.
You're getting inspiration, a jumping off point, but the actual creation, that's all you.
That analogy really helps, doesn't it? It grounds it. He gives more examples too, like AI creating maybe several different drafts and the student picks and chooses elements.
Or using AI to gather stats and research for a paper. Though he does give a really important warning there
Yeah.
about AI hallucinations.
Right. We need to explain that. When he says hallucinations, just so you know, that's when the AI basically makes stuff up. It sounds believable, but it's actually wrong or just nonsense.
Yeah, critical evaluation is key there. Don't just trust it blindly.
Definitely.
Mm.
Matt also talks about scenarios like a student writes some key bullet points and then uses AI to kind of flesh it out into a draft. He points out that's actually pretty relevant in some professional jobs, too.
Or, get this, a student writes their draft, AI writes its draft, and the student borrows good ideas from the AI version to improve their own.
Okay. Two more from Matt's spectrum really jumped out at me. One was AI actually guiding a student through the writing process, almost like a personal writing coach. He mentioned Khan Academy's Conmigo tool as an example.
Oh, interesting.
And the other one was where a student writes until they get stuck, hits a wall, and then uses AI just to get unstuck and keep going.
You see, what's so useful for you about this whole spectrum idea is that it pushes us way beyond just a simple yes or no on using AI.
Yeah.
It really makes us think about the specific context, right?
Yeah.
What's the learning goal? How much is the student really engaging their brain?
Exactly. Matt's main point is that each of us, educators, maybe even students, we need to think carefully about where we would draw the line on that spectrum. There isn't one single right answer.
It's all about that nuanced thinking. which actually leads perfectly into Dan Fitzpatrick's perspective. His core principle: outsource your doing, not your thinking.
Yes. This idea from Dan, it feels like a really valuable guidepost for you as you try to figure this all out. He really stresses that even if students use AI tools, they have to be the main thinking agent.
hmm The core intellectual work,
Mm.
the understanding, the critical analysis, the original thought that has to be the students. The AI is the tool, not the thinker.
He even mentioned some pretty interesting research suggesting that AI, like ChatGPT-4, might actually be better sometimes at generating initial ideas than humans are.
Really? Better?
That's what the research suggests. And this is the crucial part. Dan emphasizes the human step of developing those ideas, taking ownership, making them better. That's essential. You can't just take the first thing the AI spits out.
Dan used a great analogy too. Remember the AlphaGo story? The AI that mastered the game of Go?
Yeah, beat the world champion.
Right. But what's even more significant, and something for you to consider, is that a later version, where AlphaGo actually worked with a human player, apparently performed even better than the AI alone.
Wow. So human plus AI was better than just AI.
Exactly. It really highlights the potential of that collaboration, but also, the irreplaceable role of the human.
And this raises a really important question Dan posed, one I bet many of you are grappling with. What are the downsides of trying to completely shield students from AI? Are we actually preventing them from learning how to use it responsibly and ethically? Skills they're definitely going to need later.
That's a critical point for you to wrestle with. If we don't teach them how to use these powerful tools properly now in a supportive environment, are we maybe setting them up for failure or misuse later on in university or their careers?
Yeah, it's a real dilemma, and it leads us straight into this really thorny issue of academic integrity in this new world. If AI tools are everywhere, how do we redefine what learning and proving you've learned actually looks like? Dan Fitzpatrick suggests we need to shift away from just trying to control everything
Right, away from policing it.
and towards more dynamic ways of assessing students.
And what's particularly relevant for you here is that maybe traditional assessments, like, say, the standard essay written alone in exam conditions, maybe they don't really show genuine understanding anymore, not in a world where AI is always available.
So what are these dynamic assessments Dan talks about?
Well, he gives examples like collaborative projects or presentations, things where you can see the process, not just the final product.
Okay, think about how different those are. With group projects, you can assess how they work together, who contributes what, maybe even how they used AI if they did.
In presentations, well, they force students to really articulate their understanding, answer questions on the spot. It's harder to fake that.
It really pushes you then to ask a fundamental question. What is learning now? How should we measure it effectively when knowledge itself is so easy to access? Dan calls it cheap.
Yeah, if getting basic facts is easy, maybe the real value now lies in applying that knowledge, integrating it with human skills like critical thinking, creativity, communication.
Which brings us, inevitably, to AI detection tools. They seem to be everywhere now, don't they?
Oh, definitely. They become really common. But this is where some serious concerns pop up, things you really need to be aware of. There's quite a bit of research now, plus tons of stories suggesting these detectors, well, they're not always reliable.
Not reliable how?
We're hearing about a lot of false positives. Students getting flagged for using AI when they swear they didn't. Even stories of teachers' own kids being wrongly accused by these tools.
Oh, wow. That's incredibly worrying. Think about the impact on a student's confidence or the trust between students and teachers if those accusations are wrong.
Exactly. And Dan pointed out that several big universities, Vanderbilt, Pittsburgh, University of Texas, they've actually decided not to rely on these detection tools anymore. That says a lot, doesn't it?
It really does. So is there any use for them?
Well, maybe a limited one. Dan suggested perhaps using them just to flag work that seems really, really different from a student's usual style or quality. Not as proof of cheating, but maybe as a sign to have a conversation.
Ah, okay. Like a conversation starter. Hey, this seems different from your usual work. Let's talk about it. Not an immediate accusation.
Precisely. It should be about dialogue, checking in, seeing if maybe they're struggling or something else is going on. Using it as definite proof seems really risky, given the accuracy issues.
Yeah.
And Dan makes this crucial point, something for you to really take away. Think about all the time, the money, the energy being poured into buying and using these detectors. Couldn't that be better spent developing those more dynamic, authentic assessments we talked about? Assessments that actually work with the reality of AI.
It's about shifting focus, isn't it? From
Right.
policing to pedagogy.
Exactly. And the whole debate around AI and cheating, It really just highlights a much bigger need for innovation in education generally. Dan mentioned something called the three-box solution, basically the idea that we need to move beyond just small tweaks and embrace more fundamental changes.
So AI isn't just a problem to solve, it's maybe a catalyst.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's forcing us, maybe kicking us, into reevaluating some of those traditional practices and assessment methods that, let's be honest, many educators felt weren't really hitting the mark even before AI got so sophisticated.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it seems pretty clear, hopefully for you too, that the question is using AI cheating. Well, it's not black and white, is it?
Not at all. Matt Miller's spectrum is so helpful there, showing that huge range of possibilities. The context is everything.
And Dan Fitzpatrick's principle, say it again.
Outsource your doing, not your thinking. It's such a useful anchor for you, ethically speaking.
But maybe one of the biggest takeaways, something for you to really chew on, is the serious concern around these AI detection tools, their potential inaccuracy, the damage they can do to trust. It really calls for extreme caution.
Definitely. So maybe the final thought for you is this. How can you shift your focus? Instead of spending energy trying to catch AI use, how can you maybe foster responsible integration? How can you design assessments that genuinely measure understanding and application in this new AI-infused world?
It's a big ask, but maybe a necessary one. And we definitely recommend checking out the resources Matt Miller and Dan Fitzpatrick have out there. Their newsletters, books, websites, they offer a lot more practical advice to continue this conversation.
Absolutely. Lots more to explore.